This is what the fake news misses. We've taken control of Iran's airspace and waterways without boots on the ground. We control their fate. But when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality. The terms of this war will be set by us at every step.
On the contrary, I would actually love to live in a country where we have a great president and I can help make the president look good. But we unfortunately don't live in that kind of country. We live in a country that is ruled by a leader that has his balls firmly grasped by a foreign leader. And so as a result, the US has been dragged into a war against Iran that has quickly escalated into a regional war. Things have already gotten out of control. The US is low on missile interceptors, which is pretty disastrous considering the fact that the interceptors are far more expensive and difficult to make compared to the cheaper drones and missiles that Iran seems to have in abundance. So that's what we're dealing with right now. But of course, Pete Hegseth would like us to stop talking about this. He would like us to stop drawing attention to the fact that we've already lost at a minimum 6 members of our military, men and women in our armed services. And this is in Israel. Israel likes to hide the damage that they have sustained as a result of the war that they've been egging on. Tel Aviv has been battered. I don't know how high the death toll is in Israel because they prevent journalists on the ground from reporting these specific details of how much damage the Iranians have managed to do in Tel Aviv. But we're in the United States of America, and our soldiers deserve to have their names read, to have their memories brought up, considering the fact that they sacrificed in their minds for our country. In the end, they ended up losing their lives on behalf of a foreign country. So to be fair, there are 2 things Hegseth could be referring to in the statement that we showed you earlier. So he could be talking about the deaths of Americans. He could also be referring to that strike on a elementary school that killed 160 children, elementary age children. Both look bad for Trump, there's no question about that. And CNN's Caitlin Collins decided to press the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, about this. And things got heated, to say the least. Take a look.
Given what Secretary Hegseth said this morning, is it the position of this administration that the press should not prominently cover the deaths of US service members?
No, it's the position of this administration that the press in this room and the press across the country should accurately report on the success of Operation Epic Fury and the damage it is doing to the rogue Iranian regime that has threatened the lives of every single American in this room. If the Iranian regime had their choice, they would kill every single person in this room. And so we can all be very grateful that we have an administration and that we have men and women in our armed forces who are willing to sacrifice their own lives for the rest of us in this room and for every American across the country and for every troop that is based in the Middle East. That's what these.
Hegseth was complaining that it was front page news about these 6 service members who were killed.
That's not what the secretary said, Caitlin, and that's not what the secretary meant, and you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. You and your network know that you take every single thing this administration says and tries to use it to make the president look bad. That is an objectable fact.
I don't think covering troop deaths is trying to make.
If you're trying to argue right now that CNN's overwhelming coverage is not negative of President Donald Trump, I think the American people would tend to agree.
Oh, the coverage is negative. The coverage is definitely negative. He's a bumbling idiot and dragged our military into a potentially devastating war that could require ground troops pretty soon. And he did it on behalf of a foreign country. Yeah, he's getting a lot of bad press right now for good reason. You wanna know one of the other good reasons he's getting bad press? Because he reneged on his promises, namely this promise.
I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. No more wars, no more disruptions. We will have prosperity and we will have peace. Under Trump, we will have no more wars, no more disruptions, and we will have prosperity and peace for all. I am the candidate of peace. I am peace.
Just Just a side point, Ukraine's in a lot of trouble because we're not even able to provide interceptors for Persian Gulf allies of ours because we're low on interceptors and we're using everything we have to protect Israel. So I don't know what's going to happen with Ukraine. And the opportunities to agree to a peace deal where Ukraine, yes, would have to give up some of their land, but at least they wouldn't have more of their land taken by Russia. They should have taken those deals, to be honest with you, because now Ukraine is an afterthought for the Trump administration entirely. Anyway, moving on. According to new polling from CNN and SSRS, many Americans do believe that Trump is an idiot. Okay, that's not what the poll asked, to be fair. Americans don't believe that Trump tried hard enough to avoid war. And I think that that's an accurate frame of mind. So 6 in 10 Americans disapprove of the direction or the decision to take military action against Iran. So this is just the latest poll. There have been similar polls that we've shared with you. Most say that they lack trust in Trump to make the right decisions about US use of force in Iran, with 60% saying they do not think he has a clear plan for handling the situation, and 62% saying he should get congressional approval for any further military action. The poll is just absolutely horrible for the Trump administration and for the Republicans as we get closer to the midterm elections. So for instance, just over a quarter, 27% feel that the US made enough of an effort at diplomacy with Iran before using military force, with 39% saying the US did not try hard enough at diplomacy first, and 33% say that they're unsure. By the way, these polls, as it pertains to foreign policy issues, tend to have a high percentage of Americans responding don't know or unsure. And that really is an indictment of our media, because foreign policy is something that, generally speaking, the media stays away from. And as a result, when these conflicts happen, unless you're, a bit of a news junkie or really care about foreign policy, you're not necessarily going to know exactly what's going on. And I think that's by design. Now, I do want to talk about the US service members who have been killed, because 4 out of 6 have been identified so far. By the way, this is just my speculation. I hope I am wrong about this, but I do have a gut feeling that, considering all of the damage the US has sustained at our embassies, at like that CIA center in Saudi Arabia, I think that the casualties on the American side likely are higher than we know, but we're gonna have to wait for confirmation on that. For now, though, I wanna show you the 4 service members who have been identified, who did lose their lives through strikes while they were in Kuwait. So clockwise from the top left, you have Declan J. Cody, age 20, 20-year-old kid. 20-year-old kid, guys, not even old enough to drink an alcoholic beverage, lost his life in Kuwait as he was in a triple wide trailer that Pete Hegseth lied and said was fortified. Nicole Amor, 39 years old. Noah Tietjens, 42 years old, and Cody Cork, 35 years old. What's even more devastating about the fact that these individuals lost their lives was that a few of them were actually about done with their military service. So Hegseth claimed that they were, again, in a fortified building. That wasn't true. The only thing that the building had to protect it was like a concrete wall that was erected specifically to prevent damage from possible suicide bombers, as if we're like in 2003 right now, but okay. So Tietjens and Amor were potentially going to basically retire from their military careers. This was supposed to be their last deployment. So Amor's 18-year-old son was getting ready to graduate, and she didn't want to miss any more of her 9-year-old daughter's childhood. And Tietjen was 3 months away from finishing his deployment in Kuwait. His brother told the New York Times he just wanted to get there and get it over with and get back. So with that in mind, I want to turn to Mark Levin, who has egged on this disastrous war and callously discusses the loss of American lives in this next video.
Unfortunately, every casualty is very sad, and it affects a family. And we don't like the fact that we lose any red-blooded Americans. But the battle against the Iranian regime, the purpose is to protect the American people, protect our armed forces, protect the homeland, help our allies, protect tens of thousands of people from being slaughtered, who've been slaughtered. And yes, retribution, to make it clear that you don't get to do this to us for half a century without any effective response. So of course, if we lose heroes, and we lost 3, and there may be born, the president says likely so, because it's a massive military operation. It's a terrible thing. They gave their lives. They gave their lives for a great cause. The cause is to try and ensure that it doesn't happen again, but on a massive, broader scale. We're talking about nuclear weapons.
I know that probably didn't sound callous, but to me, it's callous because he's lying, repeating the same BS. The only group of people who have killed tens of thousands of individuals in the Middle East are the Israelis. Iran did not kill tens of thousands of Americans. The only country in the Middle East lately that has killed Americans are the Israeli settlers in the West Bank. 10 Americans have been killed in the West Bank since October of 2023. And then you have the 6 American soldiers who got killed in Kuwait as this stupid war against Iran kicked off. And at least Mark Levin understands that here in America, you can't be as brazen about how little you care about the lives of our soldiers as you can be in Israeli media. Israeli media, they're much more honest. And I want to turn to Niv Raskin over at, I believe it was Channel 12 News in Israel. Here's what he had to say about American troops as they came under friendly fire in Kuwait. Now, this had to do with American troops whose jets were shot down. Luckily, they were all ejected from the planes and they're okay. They didn't die. But nonetheless, the wording here that you're about to hear from Raskin is important. Take a listen.
נחזור ונדגיש, חברים, נחזור ונדגיש. מדובר באירוע בכווית, אמריקאי, לא חלילה, כמובן, אירוע ישראלי.
They were American forces and not, God forbid, Israeli forces that came under friendly fire. We need to get them all out of office. I mean, I can't think of more than maybe 2 incumbent lawmakers that I would keep, but we need a reset when it comes to our government. We need to get all of these ghouls out immediately. Luckily, there have been some elections recently that show you just how unpopular it is to be a candidate who supports Israel. So we'll talk about that a little later.
I am more fearful than ever after this briefing that we may be putting boots on the ground.
B-2s, B-52s, B-1s, Predator drones, fighters, controlling the skies, picking targets. Death and destruction from the sky all day long. You can say 4 weeks, but it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 3. Ultimately, we set the pace and the tempo.
This is as serious as it gets. This is war and peace. They told us in that room that there are going to be more Americans that are going to die.
Doesn't it feel good to know that someone who's potentially still an alcoholic is setting the pace and the tempo for a quickly escalating war in the Middle East? And yes, I am talking about Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. And the real question that many in America are wondering at this moment is whether or not the Trump administration intends to send ground troops to spur regime change in Iran. That would be devastating. But it seems like it's something that Trump is certainly open to. At the same time, today's Pentagon presser featuring Secretary of War Pete Hegseth made clear that the White House really has no idea what they're doing as this war against Iran has escalated into a devastating regional war. So let's get to some of these details, because yesterday, the Senate took part in a classified briefing on the war, and it apparently shook Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal quite a bit. Here's what he had to say.
I am more fearful than ever after this briefing that we may be putting boots on the ground and that troops from the United States may be necessary to accomplish objectives that the administration seems to have. But I also am no more clear on what the priorities are going to be of the administration going forward, whether it is destroying the nuclear capacity of Iran or simply the missiles or regime change or stopping terrorist activities.
So Senator Blumenthal left that classified briefing on the war against Iran even more confused about what the administration's objectives are. So I'm of two minds on this. On one hand, I understand why Blumenthal would be confused, because we're dealing with an administration that has absolutely no idea what they're doing, and they're being led by a foreign country, Israel. On the other hand, though, I don't think Blumenthal is that stupid. And what I mean by that is, it is clear to anyone who's been paying attention that this has been about regime change in Iran from the very beginning. Netanyahu has been urging the United States to fight this dirty war on his behalf, on Israel's behalf, for literally decades. You can find videos of him dating back to the late 80s, where he's fear-mongering about Iran and their nuclear capability, which didn't even exist, never existed. And why did he do that? Because he wanted to go the United States to engage for regime change, not for the weapons, not because Israel's genuine. Israel is a nuclear power. They have a clandestine nuclear program. They stole our nuclear secrets, thanks to Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell. The Dimona nuclear site is the clandestine nuclear site belonging to Israel. Israel is not worried about being wiped off the face of the earth. They are a nuclear power. Okay, nuclear weapons serve as a deterrent. And so when Iran enriched uranium to 60%, remember, you need enriched uranium at 90% in order to be able to build a nuclear bomb. But they had enriched up to 60%. Why did they do that? Because they were trying to have a latent deterrent, because they knew of the threat that Israel and the United States posed to their own sovereignty. And they were right about that. So anyway, Blumenthal knows, so him pretending like he's confused about the objectives, I'm not really buying it, but I can understand if Blumenthal is concerned if the Trump administration doesn't have a sound plan in place to, protect our troops, protect our military assets in the region, protect our embassies, which the Trump administration didn't do. And our embassies got targeted in various countries, including Bahrain, including in Qatar, Saudi Arabia. We had a CIA center in Saudi Arabia that the Iranians bombed. So do I think the Trump administration really knows what they're doing? No, I don't. But do I know what their objective here is? Yeah, their objective is get on your knees. Netanyahu's gonna take his pants down, and you're gonna pleasure him. You are at the pleasure of a foreign country's leader. Duh. Okay, now later during an interview with News Nation, House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, another Republican, said that boots on the ground in Iran might be unavoidable.
If there are boots on the ground, I hope they're not on the ground any longer than the boots on the ground were in Venezuela. But I think that that's something the president knows, that members of Congress certainly hope doesn't happen, but sometimes that's unavoidable in a situation like this.
Nonsense, it's not unavoidable. You could have just, avoided striking Iran and escalating the situation to a regional war. But that would require you to stand up to Netanyahu and the Israelis, which for whatever reason, this administration is unwilling to do. But to be fair, I mean, Biden was unwilling to do that. Biden's not even in the Epstein files as far as we can see. So it looks like he just did it for the love of the game. So Biden's just a bad guy. He wasn't even being bribed, or no, he was definitely being bribed. He took a lot of money from the Israel lobby, but I don't think that was the motivating factor for Biden. With Trump, the way he has behaved when it comes to the release of the Epstein files, very suspicious. It seems like there's something more at play when it comes to the Trump administration. But going back to Blumenthal's statements, he is correct in being confused about the Trump administration's plans here, right? Like how are they planning on carrying this out? What are they doing to protect Americans? Well, Senator Brian Schatz, a Democrat, shares the same concern that Blumenthal has, but he's a little harsher in his wording. Let's take a quick look at that.
There are times when you go into a classified session and you walk out and you have a better understanding about the gravity of the situation and the rationale behind the military action. This is not one of those times. We remain as confused as the American people are. They have had 3 or 4 or 5 justifications for this act of war over the last 4 or 5 days, and nothing in this classified session alleviated that confusion.
Look, the truth is you get different messaging depending on which administration official is speaking at any given moment. And I want to give you a sense of what I'm talking about here because, okay, let's move away from the administration. Let's actually take a look at the Republican Party. Let's look at congressional lawmakers. They can't even admit that we are in a war right now. And if you don't believe me, here's a little taste of what I'm talking about.
You'll concede this is war. You'll concede this is war.
We haven't declared war. They declared war on us, but we haven't.
War. Secretary Hegseth.
We haven't declared.
Just now, you said this is war.
They've called it war.
They've called it war. What I was saying. Okay, well that was a misspoke. What I was saying that they've declared war on us, but war is ugly.
I don't believe in the semantics. We've talked about the language this morning. We're not at war right now. We're 4 days in to a very specific, clear mission, an Operation Epic Fury.
I had the displeasure of doing her take this morning with one of the dumbest women I've ever met in my life. Her name is Bianca. And she made the same statement that you just heard Mike Johnson make, that no, we're just doing targeted strikes. Are we? Are we just doing targeted strikes? Bianca, you moron. I would prefer to listen to what the president has to say about how to classify our military actions in the Middle East right now. Take a look.
Well, thank you very much. These are exciting times. I think you probably want to speak about war rather than this, but this is very important. This is very important, and we're doing very well on the war front.
Oh, we're doing very well on the war front. Oh, interesting. They have no idea what they're doing. No idea what they're doing. Complete and utter disaster. And I suspect the reason why there's this contradiction in the messaging of whether or not this is a war is the American people don't like what's going on. They don't want to get dragged into a war in the Middle East on behalf of a foreign country. Only 25% of Americans were somewhat kind of open-minded to military action against Iran. And that was before the military action began and 6 of our soldiers got slaughtered. So who knows what they're thinking right now? But Senator Josh Hawley left that classified briefing and said this. He believed the officials did not communicate a possible end date. Quote, "It sounded very open-ended to me." Listen, I know that I've got a great skincare routine and I look way younger than I am. Not to compliment myself too much, but I was around and very aware of what was going on in the preemptive war against Iraq. This is completely mirroring everything that we experienced in the lead up to that war. The lies, the deception, the embarrassment to the American people. And more importantly, the deception about how easy and quick it would be to invade Iraq and destroy their weapons of mass destruction. That war wasn't quick, it wasn't easy, and it was absolutely devastating to our budget, here in the US. It was devastating, more importantly, to our soldiers. The soldiers who lost their lives, the soldiers who had multiple deployments and will have lifelong mental health issues as a result of the trauma they had to deal with in Iraq. These people in the administration, in our government, are scum. They don't represent us. They don't care about us. And we as Americans, regardless of where you land on the political spectrum, I don't even care at this point. It's not even about partisanship at this point. This is about whether or not you want to protect this country or if you want to be a puppet for a foreign country and get our people killed in the process. That's where I'm at with this. So this is where we're at. And I'm terrified that they send ground troops to Iran without any real plan in place, knowing full well, by the way, that we are running out of interceptors. So imagine putting human bodies, American bodies on the line, knowing that we're running out of interceptors. So look, CNN reports that the Trump administration officials told lawmakers during a closed door briefing the following: Iran's Shahed attack drones represent a major challenge, and US air defenses will not be able to intercept them all. And that's according to a source in the briefing. This is something that I've been reading about in various military outlets as well. Because if you want to get a better sense of the truth and what the military is actually concerned about, they're concerned about this. They're not able to intercept some of these drones. And on top of that, we are running low on interceptors, period, okay? So in regard to the drones, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, acknowledged are posing a bigger problem than anticipated. They are known to fly low and slow, a feature that makes them more able to evade air defenses than ballistic missiles. So introducing more American troops in that region and potentially on the ground in Iran would be devastating, would put their lives at risk, would certainly lead to far more US casualties. And for what? If you're a Republican and you were hoodwinked by this administration during the Trump campaign when he said that he was going to be the peace president, that he wasn't going to drag us into forever wars, look, he lied to you. And I'm not going to mock you for that. I'm not going to, trash you for that. You had faith in the guy and he betrayed you. But enough is enough. If you love this country and you're genuinely America first, you can't keep defending this garbage.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.